How to lead in your market. This is a flow diagram I put together with a lot of key concepts that give an overview of how to approach being the best business that you possibly can and how to lead in your market. Now, there's a lot of concepts in here and a lot of detail, so it wouldn't be expected that all businesses, especially small businesses, do all these things. However, it's really important to be aware of them and frame them so that you can think about them during your processes, and also allows you to think about the concepts as we're doing the other work. So where we start is actually defining your people. So who are your customers? And more importantly, who are your preferred customers? Because you may be jumping from your existing customers to maybe targeting a different type. I urge you to also explore diversity. So a great example of this is Bunnings, who worked out that all sorts of people buy hardware, not just men. So if you go into any Bunnings store and look at their staff, you'll find a huge range of diversity. Old people, young people, people of colour, women, different ages, etc., etc. And that's no coincidence. Bunnings has been deliberately staffing with diversity because then that makes it welcoming to other people. So think about your customers and actually look at how being more accepting or communicating to people with diversity can actually be a very positive thing. So from here, you want to create personas, which are characters, descriptions of your preferred customer. So in that case, you'd sort of have their age, background, education level, where they're coming from, that sort of thing. It's really important to create personas because then you can humanize the discussions. And so rather than looking at data, middle-aged women, my target, you can actually talk about Betty, who is part of your process, and then how would Betty feel about this? The next step is to actually know your people. And I use the analogy here of an actor. So if an actor is going to portray a character, they do a huge research process and they immerse them in their world. They want to really understand deeply this character so that they can deliver an accurate performance. And this is the same thing with your research. You want to know what their needs are, what they desire, their fears, motivations, and their challenges. All these things, if you know them intimately, you can provide systems and services to actually work with them much better. From there, you want to research behavior of these people. So you really want to listen. The best way is to actually talk to your people and listen. So maybe you've got some good customers you can talk to, or maybe you know someone who sits in within your target group and ask them questions, talk to them. There's a bunch of research studies on this sort of stuff. So jump on the internet and find research on your demographics. So marketing research, statistics on what platforms they use, all those sort of things. Now, surveys do have their place, but generally they suck. And the reason is you're only surveying people who fill out surveys. And most people don't, especially if they don't have a relationship with you already. So always take that technique with a grain of salt. AI is also a really great tool for doing research. So just ask a bunch of questions into AI. Now, always be skeptical of your results and just try to cross-reference them. Audit and review the current data you have. So look at your web statistics. Facebook and other social media have really good detail on demographics and different sectors. So try and find any data that you have. And read reviews, like comments on your Google Business and Facebook reviews, that sort of thing. And also look at yours and your competitors and see what people are saying. See what really annoys people. See what makes people happy. That's your key learnings. If there's a bunch of people that are saying they're really happy with a certain business and how their behavior, then that's a really good learning. And the same thing, if there's a lot of complaints about a business, you can really look at what are those complaints and then try and make sure your service doesn't have that system. So once you've got a good understanding of your people, then how will you attract them? Would it work for your business to be more niched? Now, niches work really well because then you can target the specific personas you're targeting very accurately. The problem with that with some businesses is that you've got a generic, you may have a generic service and it's much harder to want a niche. But even if you do have a generic service, have a think about how you can be a little bit different, like how you can stand out in a busy marketplace. So you really want to have just something that your business is different from everyone else. Or if it's appropriate for your business, you actually go really niche and then you can really talk to your people. What are the advantages of your business? Like, why would someone come to your business or service? Like, you really want to understand what you're doing well and what you're doing better than others so you can really expand on that and communicate it. And from there, you want to look at like, how can you lead? How can you lead in your market? You want to ask that question, like, and that's something you would always be asking, like, how can I be better than everybody else in that context? Now, the next step is to speak to your people. And the first step of that is to develop a brand personality. So this is the personality of your brand in the same way it would be a person. So an example of that is a few decades ago, banks' personalities were very authoritarian. So if you ever saw a bank ad, it would be, solid, respectful, sort of father figure type branding and promotion. Now, if you look at banks advertising today, you'll notice that it's more like a friendly mum that's looking after her kids and managing the day-to-day business of her family. And they've deliberately shifted their brand personality to be much more focused at being family friendly, warm, and inclusive. So it's quite a deliberate strategy, which would have been based on research and results that they've done. So in that context, what is your personality? Are you a very medical, precise? Are you really rough around the edges? Are you warm and friendly? So there's a whole bunch of different ways to describe your business. So a good way of thinking of it, how would you describe your friend at the pub? Oh, they're really tough to get to know, but once you do, they're super friendly. They're just a little rough, but they're actually really professional. You would talk the same thing about your brand. How would you describe your brand? So in that context, if that's a juxtaposition from your people, then you want to change your brand personality so that that brand works with your people. So from there, you want to have a communication strategy. So that is how you're going to talk. What sort of language are you going to use? Are you going to use very scientific jargon-laden language, or are you going to use really easy to understand non-jargon language? So I've tried to, in my guides that I've got here, is to really remove jargon unless that jargon is important and try to make the language easy to learn. Once you think about, and also part of your communication strategy would be how do you represent your brand? So that would be fonts, colors, like what sort of colors, what textures, what type of photography would work for you? If you've got a really prestigious high-end brand, then you really need lush photography, really professional photography. But if you're a small business, a small local business, those fancy photos will probably be a bit much and make you look like you're expensive. So maybe middle ground's far better, where you've got quality photos, but they look like you've taken them. What's in your photos? Are you going to sort of treat the photos? Now, for some brands, photos can be complex, so maybe it's an illustration style, and then you can communicate what you would in photography with illustration. Once you've got a strategy and how you want to communicate, then you need to then build your brand assets. And so by that, the main brand asset is a logo, and then you want a color scheme or a style guide. And then from there, you may have a few different assets. You may have some sort of graphics that you add to your posters and a few design elements. Okay, so now you're ready to go with your communication. You want to do a little bit more research, and this is actually looking around you at what's happening in your market. So you want to research your industry. So the first thing you want to do is like look at the best examples of websites and communications in your industry. You're trying to find the best website so that you can understand what is the best, so you can try and aim for that. From there, you also want to look at your direct competitors and what are they doing. So they may not be as good as the top level, but there's a lot of learnings there, especially if they are out competing you. And the other thing you want to look at also is industry resources. So the tourism industry, for example, the government funds a whole bunch of research, whole bunch of support guides. There's heaps of support for tourism businesses. So you just look at your state government organisations, and then they'll send you the reports, and you can learn a lot from that. And other industries or unions or industry bodies will be doing research and that sort of thing. So really tap into that. So a little bit more on your competitors. So while you're going through your competitors, you really want to look at what are they doing well and what are their weaknesses? What are they doing badly? Now, the important thing of all this research is to look for patterns. And patterns usually form because they work. So, for example, in a certain industry, there may be a book now button on the header on every website. So at that point, you think, well, there's a reason for that. And so therefore, if I don't have, if I'm not sure whether to have a button there or not, then I should just do it and then try it out. And patterns are very important. And you might be looking at, well, every website in my industry, any good one, has a big image as you load in, or there may be, or they may have a contact form right up the front, or all those sort of things. So you really want to start looking at what are the patterns that you're seeing. Now, I've also added, okay, in that context, you'd go, what is your advantage in context to your competitors? So if you've got a crowded marketplace and everyone looks the same, how do you stand out? Like, how are you going to differentiate yourself from the other businesses? And I've also added here in competitor, I've got a little asterisk. And then on that asterisk, I say opportunities for collaboration. So unfortunately in business, everyone gets this really hardcore mindset about competition. I'm competing with everyone. Now in that context, there's also a lot of better approaches where you can still compete on one level, but then you support each other and actually help each other grow. And I'm a real fan of collaboration rather than competition. So while you're going through industry research and looking at competitors, start looking for certain opportunities that may be good for collaboration or working together on certain things. Okay, so now we've got an idea of what the market's doing, what your competitors are doing. Now we're going to just jump back to your customers. And we're going to talk about a concept called user-centered design. And what this means is when we design a service or a product, we are focused on the user and how the user interacts with it. Because no one really cares what you think about your website or what you want. In that context, it's about your customer and making what they want. So whenever you're working on these systems and these ideas, always go back to your user and center your design around them. So you want to start looking at things like, what do your customers want and need? How do they want to interact with you? So for example, a stereotype of an older generation person just wants to jump on the phone and speak to a human. Now, if you've implemented a whole AI chatbot, that's just really going to annoy them. So if you're a big business and the cost savings are there, you may choose to annoy your customers and just whatever. However, if you're like a accommodation business and each one of them calls could be a booking, it'd be really good to actually focus on part of your process is answering the phone, and that is part of your design. Now, on the other hand, a stereotype of more younger people is they hate phones. They don't want to talk on the phone. So they may want to send you an email, or they may want to send you an Instagram message or something like that. So you also then want to go, okay, so I want to have a solution for those people. So that means I might have to check my messages a few times a day so that those people can interact with you in the way that they want. The other thing is, what are people's expectations? So when I'm looking at software, for example, my expectations is you have pricing. I will make an assumption that if you don't have your pricing on your website, your for a software application, your software application is probably very expensive because they want me to, you're forcing me to have to make a meeting with a salesperson. They're going to give me a big sales pitch, and then I've got to have to sit through that. And all I want to know is roughly what it costs, especially if I'm looking at different applications. So in that context, my expectation is that you have your price on your website application. Now, different clients and different genres will have different expectations. So you really want to make sure you can meet those expectations so people can go to the next step. Another really good example is when people are selling their car, and you'll see they'll have their phone for sale, their phone number on their car. I'm like, I don't care. Like, why are you making me call you? Why don't you just put the price on it? You have a price in mind. If it's $10,000, just put $10,000. And I'll go, oh, that's expensive, so I'm just not going to call. But that saves you a phone call, and I'm not even going to be interested in your car. It's too expensive. Or if it's a bit cheaper, or if it's on my boundary of my price, I'll go, sure. But then I might just text because I actually don't want to speak to you on the phone, for example. The other thing is, what are people's barriers? So we have a lot of complexity around this. So some people don't use the internet, so that's a big barrier. But other people may not have credit cards. My neighbor, for example, I signed up a subscription for her because she doesn't have a credit card. There are a bunch of other barriers. So it's really important to look at those barriers and see how you can remove them or give it an alternative. How can you reduce friction? So by that I mean, in your system, how do you just make things easy? So for example, on my website, I have a calendar scheduler. So instead of someone emailing me and going, oh, I'm available at this time and that time, and I email them back, and after 5 emails we work at a time, I simply have my calendar, you book a time. So that just removes friction. It saves me a lot of time, saves them a lot of time. It's just so much easier. And how can you increase efficiencies? So that example is also a good example of increasing efficiencies. However, there's other things in your business where you can go, actually, I can just automate, sync things, or allow people, if they don't want to talk to you, to have processes where they can find their own information, FAQs, or just more information on your website, for example. Okay, next step, the user journey. So this is really key to any software as service. And if you do a search on the internet for user journeys, there'll be a bunch of examples to go look at. So for a small business, I would be searching more for small business or simple user journeys because it can get really complex. However, the basic concept is do you want to map the customer journey? So that means from where they first come across you. So that might be an ad-on in a newspaper, or it might be a Google search review. It may be a Facebook post. So then they go somewhere. Is that to your website? So that would be a touch point, what we call touch point. So touch point is every point in that journey where they interact with you and your business or your assets. So the first touch point in that example would be I saw an ad in the paper. Second touch point would be then I go to the website. Then the next touch point might be a phone call. It may be a message. And then from there, it may then the next touch point might be a booking. Next touch point might be they come to your business to do the transaction. Then the next touch point might be a follow-up call. Are you happy? And then the next touch point may be, please give me a referral or a testimonial, for example. And different personas and different people will have a different journey. And the reason it's really important to map it is, one, for you to understand it, but then you can talk to other people, and you can always be critiquing it, and you can understand that other people can discuss it with you. Because what you want to do is always try to improve that customer journey, because different technologies or solutions may come available to you which would make your journey better. Or maybe you get a lot of feedback saying, actually, what I implement isn't quite working, so maybe I can tweak it a bit. Now, on your customer journey, you then want to prioritize which touch points you want to improve. So, for example, you want to improve the ones which are really key to a transaction. So maybe your booking form is pretty key touch point, so you want to prioritize that. Or maybe touch points that are failing, or touch points that you know that actually aren't quite right, we need to spend some time on. Then you want to plan what tools, tasks, and resources you will need to improve that touch point. So for example, if it's a booking application, you need a booking application, or you need a better one. So in that case, the brief is we need a better booking engine. And what are the tasks? Well, to research one and to ask around, look at prices. And then what resources do I need? Well, I need the time to do that work. Then I need money to pay for the new app. And then I need either the time to set it up myself or money for someone else to set it up for me. And then I need to invest time to learn it. So each touch point will have a bit of a business investment. So your business might say, well, look, we can't afford that right now. You know, we're only a small business. That's totally fine. That's why planning a strategy is really important, because you might say, okay, we're aware that our booking system sucks. However, we can't quite afford it. and it's going to get busy soon. So next winter, that's going to give us 6 months to save up for it. And that's also a quiet period. And then we're going to do a new booking form. So that way this process becomes part of your core business planning about when and what am I going to invest in. So you don't have to do all this up front. It's more about an ongoing improvement. And things like photography, you might say, actually, we really do need a professional photographer. We can't afford it. So maybe that is after we've done the booking engine, and it'll be the following summer when we've got beautiful lighting where we can then pay for that investment. And the final point that I want to focus on in this flow diagram, and there are many other points, I've just tried to summarize it, is how can you apply your personality to the journey? So we talked about brand personality earlier. So for example, say you're an accommodation business and you really want to promote the nature of your local area. So part of your personality is that you have really lush images of the local flora and fauna and landscapes. You have photos of them throughout your business. You have them on your website. So in that context, when someone confirms an email booking, you may then have photos of nature on your email booking and then lists of all the beautiful things that they'll be able to visit when they come, for example. Another example is my branding is that I sort of dress up and wear crazy hats when I'm doing my videos. And I do this because generally training videos are boring and we're just trying to make them a bit more fun. But we're actually talking about marketing and how do we stand out. And so if you look at my website and all the videos together, you'll see that they look quite interesting. Like I actually would like to watch those videos rather than another boring marketing video. So that's just putting my brand personality onto my videos as we go through the process.